Welcome inside episode 508 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Piller up in the Blue Mountains, and the Senators laid an egg last night in South Florida. But the good news, Pilsy, is they've got a back-to-back to get ready for starting tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully they do better out west than they did down south in Florida. Tampa and Florida Panthers did not go the way the Sens wanted, but a matchup up against Arizona and Vegas hopefully can go better for them. And Ross, the Belleville Sens, they also have a back-to-back up against the Rochester Americans.
So you're telling me we can flush that Panthers game pretty quick because we got a lot to preview. Two struggling NHL teams. Ottawa a chance to get back in the win column. Ottawa only with 3 wins in their last 11 games. So we've got all that. Plus, friend of the show, Tyler Ray at Defense Minister on Twitter. We're going to talk a little free agency and off season. This is the Locked On Senators podcast. Your team every day.
Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Senators your first listen on this Friday, March 4th. And Pilsy, I don't want Anton Forsberg to listen to this, but anybody else on the team, that was not their best performance.
Yeah, overall, not a great team effort there. I mean, I will give some stick taps off the bat to Connor Brown. Sure, he didn't score on any of the 3 shorthanded breakaways he got, but when you have 9 penalties to kill and you get 3 shorthanded breakaways, at least you're clearing the puck and getting it out of your own zone. So you got to tip your hat to that.
So why did the Senators go on the PK 9 separate times?
I mean, we're not going to fully get into the refs here, but the reffing was a little bit of an issue. And yeah, if you want to know if the refs were an issue, Austin Watson can let you know pretty clearly.
Yes, he made his thoughts known at the end of this one after he got a 10-minute misconduct. Parker Kelly got a 10-minute misconduct for barely doing anything. I watched the replay, and he got tossed before even saying a word. So a lot of people thought, maybe he said something to a ref, and that's obviously a way to get kicked out of a game. But it almost looked like they were throwing him out for asking Montour if he wanted to fight. And Montour hit him with a reverse hit earlier in the game. Yep. Was that Montour? Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
So at that point, he's probably like, hey, do you want to actually face me and go man to man? So I don't know if that's worthy of getting kicked out. But at that point, the refs had already lost the plot of the game. It was already deteriorating into a debacle, yes, as Ray Ferraro once said. And the Senators clearly frustrated that they couldn't get anything out ongoing. This was the 3rd worst shot differential, Pilsy, in a Senators game in franchise history. They were outshot by 30. The shots were 48-18 in this one. So you can understand the sense of frustration, especially coming off a tough loss in Tampa as well.
Yeah, and I mean, the Sens were outshot 25-7 in the first. They had 2 different stretches where they went 10 minutes without a shot. Like, Florida put on an absolute clinic. There's no other way around this. Ross, the slot shots broke a record. Yes. It was like 30 slot shots. Like
32. Don't take away from Forsberg, who made 29 saves on slot shots. By far the most this year.
That's insane. Like, to have 30 shots just in general in a game is solid. And then to put all 30 shots into dangerous scoring areas when you have some of the most elite offensive talents in the game, it's incredible that Forsberg was able to hold this game to 1-0 as long as he did. And I mean, the goals the Panthers scored, it wasn't like we're watching on SportsCenter. Wow, what a beauty by Barkov here or something. It's a garbage goal by Lomberg, and like, they're not highlight reel goals. So Anton Forsberg really deserves a lot of credit here. I mean, this is, I would say, Ross, this might have even been a better performance than the home opener. Like, right up there. Like, these 40-plus save performances that he's able to pull out just randomly up against contending teams is pretty impressive. And I can't believe we didn't really talk about this, but I think the Florida Panthers may be one of the top teams that would make a lot of sense to acquire Anton Forsberg, because he doesn't cost them a lot. He's a rental. They know they've got Spencer Knight marinating in the AHL, and he is going to be ready soon. He's not ready this year, as the Sens pumped 8 on him in the past, but Jonas Johansson is probably, as the Colorado Avalanche can let the Florida Panthers know, he's not the guy you want to rely on. So
Not that guy, pal.
he's not that guy, pal. Exactly. So if you're Florida, you just got a first-class, first-hand showing of what Anton Forsberg could do if Sergei Bobrovsky needs some relief, or if, obviously, you don't want it to happen, but if you got injured, then you've got a guy that can step in and play like a number one in a short-term time period here. So I think Florida definitely got a good viewing, and they should be interested in looking at Anton Forsberg.
Pillsy, get this weird stat alert, very weird stat alert. And I need to do a little more addition here. So I'm going to let you react to the first part of it, and then I'm going to figure out the exact numbers. In games where Anton Forsberg has made 33 or more saves this year, he is 7, 1, and 2, including 4 and 1 in games where he has 40 or more shots against. Isn't that absolutely incredible? His first game, and that's a sample size of 9 games. Last night was his first game making 33 or more saves and losing.
Wow,
that's Craig Anderson-esque.
I know, yeah, that's perfect Sensing style goaltending there. And hey, you know what? Maybe it wouldn't work Anton Forsberg going to a contender. Like if he's only getting 20 shots, he's not warmed up and it's not working out for him.
Yeah, he's 4 and 8 when he makes under 30 saves.
Yeah, so that's a guy that needs to feel the puck.
Yeah, no question. And if you look just recently, like this guy has been on a whole other level. He's got to be, I mean, a 938 save percentage in last night's game might be the most incredible stat we've seen all year. I'll say the one game where I think was better. And
the
you
Carolina
said
one.
This game, exactly.
Yeah.
The Carolina game was absolutely insane on the second half back-to-back. They were just getting absolutely dominated. And the Columbus game as well, 1 goal on 36 shots as well. In Forsberg's last 10 games, he's looking at a 934 save percentage. If you want to rewind it further to let's go to the Tampa game where he had the shutout, 931 in the last 16 games. So this guy, he's clearly making a name for himself, but at the same time, you're like, okay, I know that we've been burned before here with Condon, with Hammond, etc., even Nielsen, but of course that's not really his fault getting the concussion issues. I thought he was a good goalie, but it scares me to extend him. And you know that, and why wouldn't Forsberg want and deserve a 3-year contract? It seems like that makes sense for his agent.
Yeah, I don't see Forsberg, especially he's got young kids now. He's bounced around the league like crazy. I don't see him going for a big dollar amount here. He's going to be going for security and a longer term deal. And if you're the Sens, like you got to be looking at this and you got to sell him at a high point. I mean, you got him at a low point, a waiver wire pickup. It's free money. And now you just rhymed off those stats. They're absolutely incredible. And don't think he's not going to pull up those stats when it comes time to negotiate a contract. And like we talked about, he's going to be wanting a couple of years. I don't think that's a scenario the Sens can get into. So I think the writing's on the wall. You got to trade him at a high point at this time of the season. There's no better time for this to work out for Forsberg and for the Sens. And we'd love to keep him because he's playing amazing. But I think it's time to move on and sell at a high point.
Here's a hot take. Keep Forsberg, trade Gus.
I mean, are we talking about what we want or what we think the Sens will do? The Sens
what
will
I want.
Literally never do that. I mean, they protected Gustafsson in the expansion draft and we're okay with losing Joe.
Yeah, I know. And I still disagree with that.
Yeah, you can disagree, but I'm just saying that I don't even think that option is on the table for them.
Oh no, it's not. It's not. That's just me being a little bit of a hothead after a loss and seeing what Forsberg's been able to accomplish over such a long period. They protected Gus based on a 10-game sample size last year.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just seeing an 18-game sample size of pretty friggin' good hockey from Anton Forsberg, and it's not like he's over 30. Like he's 29 years old. That's how old Craig Anderson was when he got to Ottawa.
Yeah.
If not even 30. So I'm really in a pickle. I don't envy the Sens front office for having to make this decision, because if they trade Forsberg continues to play like this, and then Gus never pans out, and of course we're cheering for him to pan out, but if he doesn't, this could be one where you look back and you're like, I don't know. It's certainly not going to be the same as the Mark Stone trade, but we got into that a lot more last night on the postcast. Yeah. But you talk about the goals, just bang away garbage goals. Well, 26 was getting his stick caught up and couldn't clear the crease there on the final goal. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't want to beat a dead horse here at this point, but He certainly is over the last month had opportunity, so that conversation can't happen anymore. It's just opportunity conversation for Branstrom has to be over.
Yeah, I mean, I still, obviously he's getting a big chance here. I still would have loved to see what he could do in a longer stretch, but with COVID canceling games and those opportunities just aren't quite there. Like if we could see him a full 60 game at least season, I think that'd be a big help, but that's not going to happen. And even if we did, I'm not fully confident that he would wow us in that scenario. And I'll repeat it once again. I know you've kind of soured on this, but I still think it's not going to work out with Branstrom and the Senators. But I think if he moves on, he can find success somewhere. But I think you got to look in the mirror if you're the Sens and if you're Eric Branstrom and say it's just not going to work out here.
I don't even know if I believe that anymore. I'm seeing a lot of Victor Mete in Eric Branstrom, and say what you want about Mete. I mean, he's the third pair defenseman, but anyways, that's
but one advantage Mete has had, though, just to quickly put it on there, is he's been able to play those full seasons, right? Yep. So, and if you're a young defenseman trying to figure out your game in the NHL, it can't be understated how important that is to get a long stay opportunity there. And we can list excuses and realities for Branstrom all day long, but he just hasn't had that chance. So whether he would have performed the same or would be developing in the same curve or better, it's impossible to really say.
That's fair point as well. Now, I think what's really disappointing, though, is he played 3 minutes less per game last year, but certainly made more impact. Like he would probably admit that too. He was a more impactful player last year than he is this year.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of players on the Sens team could say that about that final stretch where things were just clicking for everyone, especially Eric Branstrom.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, Branstrom, we assume and hope he'll be in the lineup tomorrow when they take on Arizona as well. Now, we'll get into that preview later on in the game. We've got Tyler Ray coming up to talk a little more offseason, and certainly we'll ask his opinion of Eric Branstrom, the king of the thread on Twitter at Defense Minister. But Pilsy, we got some exciting news tonight on TSN 5. We're going to get to see Tyler Boucher. Yep. Mark, my thoughts on the broadcast. They're playing the Hamilton Bulldogs, a team that just beat them last weekend, and they've got Mason McTavish. So talk about 2 top 10 picks going head-to-head tonight. What kind of challenge do you think that presents for Boucher?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a big challenge for him. And especially, I mean, with McTavish, we've seen what he can do in a big stage, like he's able to perform. And so being down in junior, he's going to dominate the way he has. So Tyler Boucher definitely is going to have his work cut out for him, especially if this game ramps up physically.
Yep, I would like to see it. Talk about physically. Just go back quickly. I'm just seeing a report coming out, Darren Dreger, that NHL Hockey Operations is looking at Austin Watson's tirade, as he called it, against the official. And at least he got his money's worth if he got fined, because he certainly let the refs know how he was feeling on that. And if you want to hear more about that incident and the game, you can go listen to the postcast wherever you get your podcast, because we're on to the weekend, Pilsy. In the words of Bill Belichick, we're on to the next one because the Senators have 2 games coming up, and so do the Belleville Sens. So let's get into a preview of both those games right after we get to Tyler Ray and a word from one of our favorite sponsors, Pilsy.
All right. Yeah, it's one of our favorite sponsors, a longtime sponsor, one of my personal favorites. It's Built Bar. You guys know I love Built Bars, and I think you will too, because look, we're rolling into March now. So New Year's resolutions, if you haven't stuck with it, it may not work, but a resolution you can stick to and I can stick to is eating delicious, healthy protein bars from Built Bar. And they got a lot of stuff. If you haven't tried the Built Bar Puffs, it's like marshmallow protein infused marshmallow. So you get the good and the bad, fluffy, marshmallowy. The reason Built Bar is so successful is because they work on making the flavor taste good and then figure out how to make it healthy. So you can enjoy that candy bar flavor while enjoying that protein bar benefit. Guys, it's low calorie, high protein. Replace those junk candy bars with these delicious, better for you Built Bars. Go to built.com, scroll down all the way down, and you can check out all the flavors, all the options they have. I guarantee you're going to love them. So if you're a loyal listener of the Locked On Senators podcast, you know we're going to hook you up with the promo code. We got you. So type in promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off your next order at Built Bar. One more time, guys, at built.com. LOCK15 promo code for 15% off your next order. It's Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar.
All right, Pilsy, before we get to the interview, or more so just a chat, it's a friend of the show coming on to talk about the offseason. Let's go through the Sens prospects this weekend. Now, I put out a tweet at Sens Central. Of course, we'd appreciate it if you go give us a follow there and subscribe onto our YouTube channel. But Ridly Greig just continues to amaze, man. He's got back-to-back games this weekend. He went toe-to-toe with Connor Bedard the other night. Connor Bedard, who looks up to him. Remember, he compared Ridly Greig's skating to Jack Eichel, decent comparable there. Ottawa will actually see Jack Eichel this weekend for the first time as a Golden Knight. But Ridly Greig had 2 assists. So did, in that game, Connor Bedard. But during an 8-game point streak right now, Ridly Greig has 15 points, almost 2 per game. Now, somebody, a hater, could say, well, only 2 goals. Well, they're both game winners. So at least when he's scoring, it matters. And then I also looked it up. So since the World Juniors, he's played 16 games. The only game he doesn't have a point is the one I went to in Winnipeg.
Everybody, make sure you're tweeting at Ross. Do not go see Ridly Greig. Do not mush him and ruin Brandon's chances of getting to the playoffs, because we need to see Ridly Greig in playoff hockey.
So what I was getting at there, in the 7 games before, so the point streaks were broken up by that one game. In the 7 games before, he had 7 goals. So don't worry about the lack of goal scoring. He's got that in spades. But 15 points, 38 shots on goal, Pilsy, in his last 8 games, +6, 23 penalty minutes as well. And if you want to see a breakdown of how all the Sens 2020 draft picks have done since being selected by Ottawa, you can go check it out. I made a very high quality graph on our Twitter page. Maybe I should pull it up here real quick just so people can see if they're watching on YouTube. A little incentive to join the show on YouTube. Pilsy, I just want to I want to get what your biggest takeaway is from this group.
Well, I mean, first off, you love seeing that a lot of these guys are having success when there's a lot of doubters saying that they wouldn't have success. Like pretty much everyone is doing.
Except I looked it up. Corey Prodman with The Athletic, he gave them an A+.
Really?
Yeah.
An A+?
Yeah, and then he didn't answer our message to come on the show. So I don't know. I guess that's why we focus on the negative from The Athletic, because the other guy had him.
Yeah, we got to hear both sides. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I would say the thing that stands out to me most has to be Ridly Greig. We knew he would dominate in the WHL, but what he's able to do, like you talked about it, if he's not scoring goals, he's getting a lot of assists. And when he is scoring goals, he's coming up clutch, just like a leader should do.
Always pissing people off.
I mean, yeah, that was also a guarantee. Him dominating and pissing people off definitely was going to happen. And I think you got to give it to Tyler Kleven, too. Sure, the points don't pop out at you, but a real Nodak Sens fan will know that he's been without Jake Sanderson for a long time here, and he's been pulling his weight and really elevating his game and helping Nodak. There's no blip in the radar for them without Jake Sanderson. They're still chugging along, and that's a big reason why they've got the momentum to have success coming up here.
I actually added ± just for Tyler Kleven. That's why I added that entire one. He leads North Dakota in ± this year. So I think that has to be noted. If there was hits category as well, he'd be number 1 on that as well. Pilsy, what stands out most for me, how about Igor almost at a 35 goal pace here, as he's played 72 games and has 29 goals at the AHL level right after the draft. Like, to me, that really stands out. And how about their last pick, Cole Reinhardt, 30 points in 77 AHL games. Like, I understand the later round picks are all just like crapshoots. So why not get somebody who can step right into the organization? You know that what you liked with him is his speed and his tenacity, but to be able to insert a guy right into the organization from the draft, and yes, he was an overager, but I absolutely love seeing the points coming from down there. And Levi Marilainen, now I know that the Finnish Junior League, maybe not the strongest, but 45 wins in 61 games since he was drafted between Kingston and last year in Finland. Like, that's a pretty disgusting record. Now, I couldn't find a combined save percent, like how many saves he had. He had a 930 save percentage in Finland and an 888 here. So I just put it's approximately 910. And I did those just off the top of the hand, but he does have 8 shutouts. So lots to jump out. Like Roby, youngest player in Liga, or one of, then youngest player in the AHL, and he's still clicking at over a half a point a game. So there's a lot to like, and we haven't even touched on the fact that their first pick's already played over 100 NHL games, and that their second pick would have been in the running for the Hobie Baker if he didn't miss so much time. So had to get that in there. It's a Friday show. We're probably going to go long today. Shocker. But now let's get to our friend of the show. Here's Tyler Ray at Defense Minister. All right, we now welcome back a friend of the show to the program. It's Tyler Ray. You can follow him on Twitter at Defense Minister. And we're going to take a peek ahead at the upcoming free agent group. And that also becomes relevant when you think we're only less than 3 weeks away from the trade deadline. But first, Tyler, welcome back to the show, man. And congratulations. You had some exciting life news since we last had you on.
That's right. I found my way. I found someone lucky enough to become my wife. So
there we go.
Yeah, and it's nice to be on the show because it was a Twitter relationship to start with, and it's a hockey relationship, so it all ties in together.
Beautiful.
You got a ring before the Sens. Happy, well, sad.
It was touch and go for a while, but yeah.
So a hockey relationship. Is she a Sens fan as well, or how did that all come together?
I'm working on her because she is a Bruins fan.
Okay.
And so we have to compromise sometimes, but I will say that she knows the team a lot better now than she did before. And we have a lot of fun with Brady, and I think she's very much a huge fan of him. So it's been fun to bring her into the fold. And also to get her up on all the Sens memes and Sens Twitter, the personalities as well. So that's
for sure.
It's exciting to be able to share my life in so many ways.
And you always have 2017 over the Bruins.
This is true. I try not to bring that up because I want things to go smoothly in my day-to-day life. So that's a topic that I only bring up if I have to.
Yeah, Dennis Bonvie almost punched us through the computer screen when we brought it up, and he was only a scout for the team. I can't imagine a hardcore fan what they'd do. Pillsy, what do you want to start with, Tyler?
Well, yeah, we're getting up to the deadline here. We all know the unrestricted free agents that are possible trade chips, but we put this question out, and I want to get your opinion on this, Tyler. Which is a bigger trade chip for the Ottawa Senators, do you think? Is it Anton Forsberg, or we don't like talking about it, but is it Nick Paul?
It's a good question, especially now, because, if we talked about this a month ago or earlier in the season, Forsberg wouldn't even be in the conversation, right? His play of late has certainly elevated him, I think. But what I'm always going to come back to is goalie markets for trades. Even if you've got a good goalie, for whatever reason, it's not the same as it is for skaters. And so I think Forsberg, if you put him out there, you wouldn't have a problem dealing him. But in terms of the return, I feel like you won't get back, what you potentially think he's worth. Whereas with Paul, I think nothing's really changed there as far as the type of player he is and the type of value that he has around the league. So that's a better trade piece. And I think, but I also think both of them are valued around the league. So you wouldn't have an issue trading either of them.
Yeah, when it comes to Anton Forsberg, he's obviously a level up from the goalies, maybe even 2 levels up from the goalies who have been on the move. But there's been 5 goalies traded since December 14th, and 4 of them were traded for future considerations. And Andrew Hammond is the other one, to give you a sense of kind of what guys are going for. And of course, with Anton Forsberg, there's been a long sample size this year of him. We just finished talking about the numbers and how they're glowing, not only in the sample size, but when he faces more shots, he's that much better. Last night was his first loss when having more than 33 saves, and he's had 7 of those games this year so far. So when you look at what kind of value, understanding maybe the mitigation that a goaltender would have, what do you think Sens fans should be content with if they get a pick or a prospect in return?
Being content with, I think you want to set your expectations for the return. It's probably like if they could get a 3rd rounder maybe you get a second.
Didn't David Riddick go for a 3rd rounder to the Leafs?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and that's like, sometimes
Foligno went for a first, so Nick Paul's
Yeah.
going for a first, second, and third then at the deadline if it's Toronto.
Honestly, the Tatar trade package. Yeah.
Yeah. The trade deadline's weird every year because oftentimes it's just the market gets set at some point, and then all of a sudden everyone has to follow that market.
Yep.
And so if there's a goalie that goes in the next week or two and gets a little bit higher return, and then all of a sudden Forsberg becomes that much more valuable.
I think that guy is Marc-Andre Fleury, right? I think teams that are going for a goalie and are serious about it are going to go for Fleury. And then once Fleury's traded, that's going to set the market like you're talking about. And now Forsberg's the top dog.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it all depends. I don't even know if the team's set on trading him either, right? So I think to them, the value of the return is not as important as, is this guy here next year or not?
Yep.
And then that's the determinant. Then they'll take whatever they can get. If the decision is we aren't going to bring him back, then if all they can get for him is a 4th round pick, they'll probably get a 4th round pick. So it's I think they have to figure out if they want him here or not, because I don't think the return, it's not going to be a thing where they like, well, we're going to lose out on this it's high draft pick return or high prospect return that's coming from if we don't trade him now. I think it's just is he come back or not? And if he is, let's get as much as we can for him.
But the thing with Forsberg, and Ross and I talked about this on the show today, is we don't see him just doing this rental deal, like finishing out his contract and then signing another 1-year deal. He's got kids. He's been moved around. He's going to be going big for some term, right? So if you're the Ottawa Senators, does that kind of make you hesitate and be like, hey, we've tried the rewarding backup goalies for short stints before, and that hasn't worked out for us. Do we just cash in on a waiver wire pickup and take a 3rd or a 4th, like you're suggesting, and let him go? Or, hey, it's never worked before, but maybe it'll work this time. Let's sign him to a 3-year deal and give him over $2 million.
Yeah, and that I hopefully they've had enough where they're not going to get burned again, and they understand what they want to do. The other consideration is how much you want to spend on goaltending next year, because and whenever I talk about Sens, it's not cap hit, it's dollars, right? That's what's important to them. Matt Murray's making $7 million next year. He's making $8 million a year after that. So Forsberg, if he comes back, even if you can get him to agree to a 1-year deal, it's not going to be what he made this year.
Nope.
So you're going to add another, let's call it $2 million. I don't know what the ask is, but probably at least $2 million.
Yep.
On top of the 7 you're going to pay Matt Murray, and then you got
Gus on a one-way as well.
He's got the one-way.
Yeah.
And so even if he's not on the team, you're paying him, $1 million or around that to play in the minors. And a team like this can't really afford to allocate that much to one position, I feel like. So that might just take the decision away from them. Like I assume they've had contract discussions with him to this point. And if it's coming back like, hey, I'm not doing the deal that I did this past summer, and nor should he, then I think that might just make the decision for you.
Worth noting, though, Thomas Chabot is making $4 million in real money next year, and his AAV is up at 8. So you're looking at a guy who maybe you got a little more flexibility, because your entire decor right now with 4 guys signed is $13 million in real money for next year. So there's that. And then, of course, the really curious thing, and this isn't a pending UFA, but what do you think happens with Nikita Zaitsev? Of course, he's got that albatross signing bonus due on July 1st this year. Do you think that ramps up the pressure? Play aside, but for the Senators to finally realize that maybe moving on from him is the best play.
Yeah, before Zaitsev, I'll just say, like on the Chabot thing, I noticed that too, right? He drops down for whatever reason next year. He goes from 7 to 4, I think.
Yeah.
And then jumps right back up the next year.
Yes.
That's great. But then I looked, so Brady's going up $2.5 million and Drake's going up a $2 million next year. So those savings are kind of offset by the raises they're giving other guys. But as far as Zaitsev goes, I think if we didn't have to deal with that signing bonus, just knowing how the team feels about him, how the coach feels about him, I would say, they don't really care about how the fans feel or how outside feelings, like he's here. But the fact that signing bonus there, the Sens, we know how they feel about signing bonuses.
He's the only signing bonus on the entire cap friendly,
and that's because they didn't give it to him.
Outside
of
occasionally
entry level,
trade for players that have signing bonuses, but they will not actually give them themselves. And usually the guys they trade before. They'll work it so that the bonus is paid out before they do the trade, so they're not the ones doing it. And Zaitsev had that weird contract because it was a 6-year deal that he signed with the Leafs, and he was only through one of it. The first 2 years had signing bonuses, so they got the Leafs to pay the second year. He's had now 2 seasons where he hasn't been, and then for the final 2 years, he's got the bonus comes back into play. And that was when I looked at the contract, I was like, this is probably off season. They look to do it, and I am of the mind, and I feel like a lot of people think that he's untradeable, like with his contract. I don't think he is, because I look at defensemen that are being traded all around the league with contracts that are in similar categories, and he's a guy that whatever you think about him, the coach trusts him to play a lot of minutes. And that seems to be, for defensemen, the overriding factor league-wide as to how you value them. So if DJ Smith thinks enough to play this guy in a top 4 position most nights, which tends to be what happened, most coaches will agree that that's how they see him. Because then I go back to Cody Ceci, it's the same thing. Like it's all based around that. So if they got the will to say, all right, we need to move on from him for financial reasons or otherwise, I don't think it would be that hard to actually make a deal. Now, you're probably not getting like a ton back in return, but in terms of moving on from him, they could do that.
Yeah, you don't think he's the kind of player where you need to add a sweetener for a team to take him?
I don't think so. Like, what you probably do is have to take someone
You
back.
got to retain
Not like the same contract necessarily, but
right.
Take some money back in the form of a roster player.
But we're not at the point in his contract anymore where you're like, okay, he's got 4 years left. Like, nobody's going to take on that term. Like, after this year, it's a reasonable 2 years left.
Yeah. And if you find a team that doesn't care about signing bonuses, because some teams do, like Ottawa's not the only one, but like a bunch of teams don't care. Yeah. So if you find within those groups of teams, the signing bonus isn't going to scare them away. It's more about whether he fits on the roster and is this cap hit work?
Yes.
That kind of thing. So I do think, that's a contract he could deal. I haven't heard anything kind of leaked out or sometimes you get some reports about them doing a little bit of shopping, nothing on that end. But also I feel like that's probably an off season and not a trade deadline deal necessarily.
What do you think the amount of moves? How busy do you think Pierre Dorion will be come trade deadline here, March 21st?
I feel like he actually will be pretty busy, but it'll be a bunch of little things, right?
Like last year, just kind of 7th round pick,
just cleaning out
5th round pick.
Yeah, it's more of a roster clean out. I mean, they're not super concerned about piling up picks. He's said that a few times. But at the same time, if you've got a bunch of guys aren't coming back, and they do on the UFA front, then you may as well deal them. For the remainder of the season, there's guys that have come back from injury now, and some guys in Belleville they could give some looks to. So you have that opportunity with a bunch of games. You may as well kind of clear out the deadwood a bit to start looking at what the roster might look like next year.
Yeah, and Pierre Dorion has mentioned that's something he's very interested in doing, is cleaning things out so that you can look at the offseason and say, here's what we got moving forward. There's not a bunch of these question marks. So, but one thing I would say is a question mark I kind of have, and I think a lot of fans do, we're talking about cap situations here, is Colin White's back from injury. And he's got a little bit of a tryout period here because he's one of the few players that has the option with the buyout rules that it's only 1/3 a buyout rule, which is a huge advantage if you're the Senators and you're looking at going that option. What do you think Colin White needs to do in order to show the Senators, hey, it's much more worth your while to keep me around? I know I'm getting paid Batherson money and I have a Batherson type contract and I won't produce at that level, but here's what I can do. Don't buy me out.
I think it's hard, and it's not his fault per se, but and especially with the injury. But even before this year started, when we knew about this, kind of deadline with the contract and the buyout, like you said, this is the year they would do it. If you don't do it this year, then you're not going to buy him out. You're sitting with that contract the rest of the way.
So just for people who might not know the ins and outs, so he can be bought out at 1/3 of the cost of his contract now, but if they wait, it would be 2/3. Sorry, I just want to get that in there.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And so he's got 3 years left after this year, right?
Yep.
And so he's got 15 million left to be paid to him. So if you pay him, you only owe him 5 million if you buy him out, and it's spread out over 6 years. So that's less than $1 million. Like in terms of, you're almost, it's like an entry level player. That the value of that contract. Now it's for 6 years, but it's still completely manageable.
Mhm.
And so you've divested yourself, because there's no way I feel like he's untradeable.
You think so? That was my next question.
I think so too.
I think so too. I can't see a team, unless he had like a really sustained period of high offensive production.
Right.
I don't know if that's in the cards for him, but let's say that happens. I can't see a team saying, "Hey, this guy's got another 3 years at close to a 5 million hit," where he's kind of shown that he's not a top 6 player. I don't think many teams would slot him in there, and that's a ton to pay for a bottom 6 player. And if you are going to pay a bottom 6 player $5 million, he better be special in that area. Like he feels he's your Pajot, or
exactly. He's killing penalties. He's playing physical. Yeah, he's doing other intangibles. Yeah.
And the problem with Colin White, who I really like as a guy, and like you have to have affection for the guy. He was the first guy to step up and actually like commit to the team, right? So there is that. He's been here a long time, long as Shabbat has. He's almost one of the longest tenured guys on the team, I think, next to Paul.
Only guy to play a game in that 2017 run, albeit 2 minutes.
So this is not me saying I don't like the guy. Clearly he's loved by his teammates. He's kind of a goofy guy, whatever. But his game is not really suited for bottom 6, because he's not really strong defensively. Like that's not his game. He can hold his own. He's not terrible, but he's not a first penalty kill unit guy. He's not your top face-off guy. And they're kind of talking about putting him on the wing, and that's fine, more just because some guys have passed him and they want to find a place for him. But I don't even think he's as effective on the wing as he is at center. So it's a guy that it's a luxury, right? He can contribute, and you like to have him in your bottom 6. You're like, hey, if things happen and we need to elevate someone in the lineup, there's a guy we can pick. We can depend on him a certain amount. But that the contract is, I don't think, ever going to dictate that you're getting good value from him. And this is a chance for you to walk away from that contract almost in entirety, because if you don't, and then you decide that's we're getting squeezed here and he's not providing value. No, if you try and trade him, someone's going to say, well, here's my Colin White. You can have him in return, right?
Yep. And
that doesn't really help. Then you're just swapping problems. So I think they got to look at. I don't know what honestly he could do the rest of this year. What'll happen, I feel like we're right in the midst of his first few games. He'll get an adrenaline rush, right? Like when they come back from a long-term injury, you kind of get that. You run on adrenaline.
2 points in 2 games.
Exactly.
But 3 now, but nobody.
I'll be interested to see at game 15, game 20, where he's at, because that's sort of a better measure of what you might see from. And then I don't know, with a long-term injury, it's a lot to ask for someone to come back and be up to full speed with everyone else for a long sustained period.
Yeah, the only name, and this would be ironic just based on the fact that they got the pick from them, but Don Granato, the head coach in Buffalo, is his coach at the junior program, speaks super highly of them. And his teammate there, we love these little connections, Alex Tuck with Boston College. So I don't know. Yeah. And a team where no team who's contending is going to be like, oh, I got to add Colin White. But maybe if they see a project in him and they're like, no, we can use him in a top 6 role, and we have space in our top 6 to give him that runway. Maybe it's a little bit of a premature evaluation. But final thing from us, Tyler, and we want to touch on the Belleville Sens, who obviously are fighting for their playoff lives, although they've won 7 of their last 10 games. But they've got this certain defenseman who's over a point per game. Like, where are you at with the Michael Del Zotto saga? Of course, we didn't mention him in the UFA discussion because he's got another year left at $2 million. So what's going to happen with him?
That's a weird one, because I could see a team looking at what he's doing there and say, hey, maybe he'll work out for us. And like the 2 million next year is the big kicker. If he was a rental, I'd say they'd have no problem getting him off the books. He clearly doesn't want to be in here. They don't seem to want him here. So I'm sure they're burning up the phone lines trying to see if anyone's interested in him at the deadline. And then if not, then they probably buy him out.
He's actually making more money next year too. 1.75 this year, 2.25 next year.
Yeah. So I think they'll try as hard as they can to find a place for him to see if someone will take that money off their hands. And if not, like, it's best for both parties. But he can stay in Belleville for the rest. Like, it looks like it's been a great addition if they can.
Yeah. He's a big part of that team and their success. Yeah.
So where do you think that went wrong? Because he's been an offensive-minded defenseman his whole career, and then it seemed like the Senators typecasted him to be this defensive stalwart, and it just was never going to work.
It's one of those things where I think if you don't make a good first impression on DJ, then you're in a tough space. Because I look at like Alex Galchenyuk, same way. Like came in, played a few games. Coach's like,
it's not going to work.
And on you, yeah, and they kind of just wipe their hands and say that's it. Like you'll hang around. Those thought it was a healthy scratch for a while, and then they just said, well, now we got to get out. And some of that I think is like, you made us look bad with us. The expectations we had for you, and I think they were unfair expectations because he's not that player. I don't know why you thought he was, but he can contribute in certain ways, but not as a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. So I just feel like both parties want to move on from that, and at least he's helping out Belleville. Like there's some value in that currently, anyways, instead of sulking up in the NHL roster.
Well, Belleville has a big back-to-back against Arundel, and the Rochester Americans are going to be following along with that, and always following along with Tyler Ray at Defense Minister on Twitter, so you can go follow him there. Tyler, always appreciate your insight. We'll do it again down the road for sure.
Appreciate it, guys.
Stick taps to Tyler for joining us. Really appreciate him jumping on. Always has great insight. And if you want to use the insight that you get from Locked On Senators to try to make a few bucks or fade us, go to betonline.net. Betonline.net. They have everything you need, from the latest odds, totals, player performance props, and more. Go see it for yourself at betonline.net. It remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just one sport, it's all sports. Your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, basketball, everything you need is right there. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and action. It's betonline.net, where the game starts. All right, Pillsy. Well, the games are coming fast and furious. I mentioned off the top the Ottawa Senators with 3 wins in their last 11 games. Certainly not the percentage points they were clicking at earlier on. Of course, you can blame injuries if you want, sure. But I feel like on a day like today, we need a little levity to come out. So I'm going to pull up a little positivity after I get an opinion from you. What would be a successful weekend for Ottawa here, going up in Arizona, in Vegas?
Well, they got to beat Arizona. Like, you can say, look, they've had injuries, the stomach flu, all this kind of stuff. They're up against contending teams on the road, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many excuses. But now you're playing an Arizona team that, if they're not rebuilding, I don't know what rebuilding is.
The toilet bowl, as said by Paul Bissonnette on this show.
Yeah, a little bit. Definitely. That's hard to avoid there. But you need to be like, okay, we were down and out, and these big teams beat up on us, poor us. But we're going to Arizona. This is a team that we have so much more firepower than, so much better goaltending than. Like, we need to be able to beat this team just for a morale boost. Like, you cannot let this stretch of losing keep on going on. You got Josh Norris back. I expect they'll get a lot more power play time than they did in last night's game. That's for damn sure. And hopefully, whether it's Matt Murray or Forsberg, they can shut the door and you can get like a 3-0 win for the Sens would be just a great morale boost. And then you head off to Vegas. And sure, Vegas isn't doing so hot right now either, but I can tell you from personal experience, going to that Vegas barn is quite a different experience, and it's pretty intimidating, and they still got a lot of firepower there in Vegas, even if maybe they're not having the most success recently. So I think you need to get that easy, nice W in Arizona and then see what you can do up against Vegas.
Yeah, it's pretty contrasting going to play in Arizona, which is going to be a pretty empty arena, and then going into Vegas. Now, Vegas just lost to Arizona last week, though. So Vegas is struggling right now. You go back to that 6-0 loss to Calgary. They're 2-5-1 in their last 8 games. So do with that information what you may. But who do you start in which game between Matt Murray and Anton Forsberg? And we got a really funny comment. My mom chimed in on our YouTube.
Yeah.
But
good point. Exactly.
Good perspective. My mom mentioning that when you've got a newborn at home, like you don't get much sleep. So maybe it's best, to go easy. Now, Mom, they're on the road, so not directly there, but I'm sure he's FaceTiming all the time and doing all that. So no, it was a good point. Good perspective. Way to go, Mom. But who do you start this weekend in which game? I'm assuming they each play one.
Yes, yeah.
Matt Murray doesn't play back-to-back.
I was just going to say, we don't have to get into that. But just quickly, before we get into that, though, Ross, aren't you happy Forsberg played that game? Like, if Matt Murray plays that game, that's not good. There's a lot of physical contact in the crease, getting peppered by shots. So I think I'm comfortable in saying that was the right decision to play Forsberg in that game, and it worked out great. Fair. I think you get Matt Murray in the Arizona game. Give him a nice softball, something that he should be able to handle, and then keep showcasing Forsberg up against these playoff contending teams. So other playoff contending teams can be like, hey, it's not like they're just giving Forsberg the easy matchups and he's just feasting off them, and that's what's boosting his numbers here. He's getting the tough matchups in second halves of back-to-backs and still able to shut the door. I really think this is showcase season for Forsberg, and to give Matt Murray the Arizona game, and then he can head into next week playing a little bit more often, I think makes a whole lot of sense. And Forsberg deserves a night off quickly here after that one. Sheesh.
Yeah, no question. I'll agree with you on that one. Any other lineup changes that you'd like to see? I mean, Adam Gaudette was out of the lineup in his last meeting there. What would you hope to see in terms of lineup for Saturday, and I guess then Sunday to be decided afterwards?
You know what? I think in this scenario, throw Mete in for Branstrom for one of these games, whether it's the first one or the second one. Just
spicy.
We've seen it from Branstrom. He's frustrated. He's taking bad penalties. He's getting beat. His ice time's going down. I just think just give him a break here. Give him one break. Let Mete get back in there. We've already said it. They're so similar players. It's not even funny. So you're not really moving the needle too much one way or another. And you get some fresh legs. You get some fresh legs for a back-to-back. So that would be one thing I would look at. Whether it's against Arizona or against Vegas, I don't think really matters that much. But I think that's the only thing I would really do there, Ross. Sure, it'd be nice to get Gaudette back in, but I don't know who you take out at that point, because I've loved Parker Kelly's game. You want to keep showcasing Sanford. I thought Tyler Ennis is still playing well. How about that hit on Brandon Montour? That was absolutely legendary from Tyler Ennis. Best to lace him up. So I don't see a spot where you need to get Gaudette in for someone else. So yeah, not too many changes.
A reminder, it's a 4 p.m. Eastern game in Arizona tomorrow. The Senators with 19 wins, the Coyotes with 15. If you add their both wins up, you've got the same amount of wins as the Florida Panthers, who beat the Ottawa Senators last night.
Yikes.
Let that sink in.
Yeah.
But the Ottawa Senators just lost to Montreal last week too. And Montreal jumped Arizona in the Locked On Power Rankings, so that Arizona's now last. So all bets are off, but it will be nice to not see plus 325 next to the odds when the Senators take on the Coyotes tomorrow. We'll be following along for all that and more. Stay locked on Senators all weekend long at Sen Central on Twitter, lockedon.senators on Instagram. And big week coming up next week. I mentioned before, I'm going to be in the booth next Friday and Saturday for the Belleville Senators in Manitoba. And we've got a couple interviews that we're working on as well. So hopefully those work out, and we can bring you that on our YouTube channel. In case you're in a craving mode for some interviews, you can go back. I think we've got upwards of 30 interviews in a playlist here on our YouTube channel, so you can go check that out. And I promise to send us off with a little levity, a little positivity going into the weekend. How great is it to see Drake Batherson and Shane Pinto on the way to the arena there? This courtesy of Drake Batherson's Instagram, and safety first, Pinner driving with the helmet on.
Hey, I mean, when you've got an injury, I don't have a problem with that at all. Let's keep Shane Pinto in a bubble so that he's ready to go this season.
Now, some people noticing on Twitter, they're wearing black and red, no yellow, as we know, the no contact, but hate to burst the bubble when the boys are out of town. I don't think they have to worry about contact here when they're not skating with the full team.
Yeah, that's definitely fair.
So we won't have to assume that they're going to be closer to returning, but it is great to see the old dress and drive, baby, from Drake Batherson, man. Just the vibe that he brings around the rink each and every day. You got to assume the team misses that on the road and on the ice. So the Ottawa Senators fall 3-0 shutout loss. Again, if you want more from that game, we've got it for you on the POSTCAST, available wherever you download your Locked On Senators podcast. Please subscribe to the show on YouTube and follow us on social media. For today, though, we say goodbye. Have a great weekend. We'll chat in the postcast tomorrow. Again, we'll be live about 10 minutes after the game. For Brandon Piller, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.